Time having arrived, I call the meeting to the Finance Committee to order for this, our first single session meeting of the summer. If you could just please rise and help us salute our beautiful flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our counselors and guests, if you so desire, you can take off your jackets because it's a little on the warmer side in here, so if you so feel like it, please do so. Mr. Clerk, agenda number 1, please.
Item 1, we have the acceptance of the minutes of the June 10th, 2024 Finance Committee meeting.
I would placed on file.
We have the appointment of retired police officer Daniel Leonard to the role of special police officer. Invited Mr. Daniel Leonard.
Mr. Leonard? All right, why don't, can somebody, does anybody know if he's coming or not?
We did not receive any communication one way or the other.
All right, do we want to put this in the back end of it, or?
Motion to move this item to the end of the agenda.
Second.
Motion has been properly made in second. All those in favor? All those opposed? It carries. Number 3, sir.
Item 3, we have the appointment of Mr. Justin Talbot of Fairview Ave, Brockton, Mass. to serve on the Brockton Conservation Commission for a 3-year term ending July 2027. Invited Justin Talbot. We did receive communication. Mr. Talbot had already had a planned family vacation and could not make it tonight.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
not that this counts for anything, but I do know Mr. Talbot. He lives a street over from me. I also know his grandfather. Great young man, great family person. He would like to serve the city of Brockton. I have no problem voting for this, but obviously every councilor has to feel comfortable with their vote. But I can tell you that I think he would be a very valuable addition to city government.
Well, this is just a recommendation for our next council meeting anyway, so we still have some time to vet this out prior to the vote on
I'll move favorable, and then if councilors have any questions, they can make contact with Justin and ask him about whatever issues might be of interest before the final vote.
Motion has been, do we need a second? Second? Second. A motion has been properly made in second to recommend this favorably. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? It carries. Thank you, sir. Number 4.
Item 4, we have a resolve from the Finance meeting of June 10th, 2024. Councilor Farwell motion to amend order number 287. Ordered that the following name sum be and the same is hereby transferred as the same was submitted by the mayor as follows. An appropriation of $3 million from water revenues raised and appropriate. 2, DPW water desal fixed charges, $2,100,000. DPW water capital, $900,000. There was an amended appropriation to $900,000 and was properly seconded. The motion carried by a hand vote. Having considered the same, motion by Councilor Lally to report favorable as amended and was properly seconded. The motion carried by a hand vote. The order passed in City Council June 24th, 2024 as amended. At the meeting of the Finance Committee on June 10th, 2024, Councilor Farwell asked to have Aquaria come before the City Council and get more information about the desal contract from Aquaria before he would accept the desal fixed charge of $2,100,000. We have invited Mr. Ramon J. Diaz, Aquaria General Manager, Mr. Alfredo Andres, Patrick Hill, DPW Commissioner, Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer, and Megan Bridges, City Solicitor.
Welcome all the guests. Councilor Farwell, this was yours. Would you like to start us off?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I try not to be too lengthy. I'd like to start with the solicitor if I could, because I know a couple of years ago there was a notice sent to Aquaria that we felt that they might be in breach of contract, and to say that this has been a consequential but also a divisive contract in the city would be a classic understatement. So I'd like to hear from the solicitor what was the action taken and what was the result of it a couple of years ago, and then I'll proceed from there if we could.
Madam Solicitor.
Hello, thank you everybody. The Aquaria contract is a very lengthy contract. Happy to provide you a copy if you'd like to see it. It goes without saying it's a contract most of us inherited. DEP has made its position clear that while it's not forcing a contract with Aquaria on the city, it is forcing a secondary water source on the city, and it views that water source to be Aquaria. The current contract expires in 2028, and the breach conversations were related to, or the conversations Councilor Farwell is asking about are related to claims by the city of breach of contract for non-performance. So the city wrote to Aquaria, we exchanged communications on our points of view on the subject, and Aquaria credited the city without charging the escalation rate in calendar, well, I'm not sure how the contract runs. It's not calendar year, but it's 2022, beginning in late 2022. That was the resolution.
What were the breaches? What were the alleged issues that precipitated this conversation and this resolution?
The precipitation was failure to provide water and unmet maintenance obligations.
All right, and if you recall the length of time when water could not be provided?
So I appreciate the question, and I didn't want to go into too many boring details, but essentially the, Cliff Notes version is the city asks for water production from Aquaria at a certain point in time during the year. In my experience, it's been in the summer. That was in 2021. Former Commissioner Rowley sent a facsimile to Aquaria, asked for water. The production wasn't met for the requested million. The production wasn't met, and that's what precipitated the breach conversations that I was involved in.
Solicitor Bridges, if you know, there are a number of regulatory requirements for Aquaria. Inspection of the pipeline, the salinity of the brine that's discharged when desalination takes place. Do we get periodic updates and reports on that? Would they come into your office to make sure that Aquaria is in compliance? Because in an emergency, at this point, they're our only alternative.
That's not something that I'm familiar with. Those are not reports that I receive or my office receives.
Okay, and if you know, back about 5 years when the chairman was serving as mayor, we amended the contract. Am I correct that we're now, I think, at 3.8 million gallons per day? That's all that we require of Aquaria? 3.81? Okay. I don't have anything more of the solicitor. I do of the other guests, but I don't know if anyone has any questions.
Does anybody else want to, the solicitor? Council?
One question. Good evening, Madam Solicitor.
Hello, sir.
So you mentioned our requirement, the city's requirement for a secondary water source. To your knowledge, is it only defined as having hookup to another water source, or does Mass DEP, do they give us kind of a quantity that we need to have access to? Right now, we're getting 3.81 from Aquaria. Do you know if Mass DEP breaks it down to secondary water source with a capability of whatever certain capacity that they deem appropriate from our secondary water source?
I understand your question. I will provide you all with a letter dated July 6, 2022. After the breach conversations began, we also went to the DEP and said, asked the question, the specific question, what is DEP's position as to whether the city is required to have a secondary water source, and if so, the basis for such position? That was a question posed to DEP. They sent back a lengthy 3-page letter. That answers the question you ask. And in general, the city has a minimum requirement of water distribution or water availability. It identifies our water sources, the reservoir, our Silver Lake, and the Aquaria contract. Silver Lake, the reservoir is offline and has been for a number of years. That is part of this letter. And the DEP says that if the city were to not renew the requirement, it would view the action as an abandonment of a water supply. I am not an environmental law expert, a water supply expert, but we've begun to have these conversations. I don't have a simple answer for you, except I'm happy to provide you a copy of the letter. And essentially, what I hear DEP saying is, you have a firm yield requirement. Tell us how you're going to meet it. That's what I view. That's how I heard it.
What is that yield of requirement in the letter?
I think it's 11.1 or 10.1 million gallons a day.
11.2 with Avon Reservoir.
Thank you.
And we currently meet that requirement through Silver Lake alone?
No, sorry, I shouldn't speak for Pat, but the Silver Lake supply does not account for our total firm yield requirement. Thus the need for a secondary source.
Okay, so what are they saying our total yield requirement is?
Yes, I'm not, I think.
Sorry.
Thank you. I'm sorry, I don't want to get up before.
Yeah, no,
This might be on the lawyer stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
So that's
Thank you.
that's a registration question, I guess. So
Well, the lawyer doesn't have to get up. You can still sit there.
Okay.
the safe yield out of the Avon Reservoir is 900,000 gallons a day. The safe yield out of Silver Lake is 10.2 million gallons a day, so for a total of 11.1.
okay, all right. And do we get water every day from Aquaria?
No.
Okay. And so we're currently meet our water requirements through Silver Lake, and then in the time frames where Silver Lake can't provide that water, that's when we hook over to Aquaria. Not hook over, but draw water from.
We've been trying to manage the lake level at Silver Lake to keep the lake elevated, because what tends to happen is when you drop the lake too much, it heats up, and then that puts us at risk for cyanobacteria. So generally speaking, in the past few years, once we hit the level of 20 inches under or below full at Silver Lake, usually I request water from Aquaria.
And where are we now with our level over at Silver Lake?
I believe right now we're at 10 inches. I'd have to look. I haven't looked at it in a few days, so.
Okay. That's the only questions I had for council. When our Aquaria representatives are forward, I would reserve some more time. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Counselor. Anyone else for the two principals sitting at the table? Nope. All right, well,
Thank you.
let's move on to the Aquaria folks.
Yeah.
Mr. Diaz and Andres, welcome.
Thank you. How are you all doing?
¿Cómo está la vida?
Perfecto.
Perfect.
Could they just identify themselves,
Yeah,
each one,
please.
for the viewers at home and for the clerk?
Yes, good evening. My name is Ramon Diaz. I'm General Manager for Aquaria.
Alfredo Andres, Project Manager for Aquaria.
Council Falwell.
Yes, gentlemen, thank you for coming in.
Welcome.
Because of the large amount of money that's dedicated to Aquaria, and because this is really the only opportunity that we as councilors have to interact with you, obviously the administration, the DPW commissioner and others may interact with you, but I think it's appropriate when we're going to authorize the expenditure of money to at least have a dialogue as to where we are with Aquaria, and recognizing we do have a contractual agreement with you. So I have some technical questions for you, and then some other questions as we wrap up. The plant started producing water on February 5th, 2009. Can we agree on that?
Yes.
Okay. And at the time the plant was constructed, a lot of equipment was installed, and you have a great number of pumps, filtered water pump, high-pressure pump, neutralization pump, raw water intake pump. Those were all installed in 2008, am I correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Have any of those been updated?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
They have?
Yes.
Okay, well, the reason I ask that is that every year you are required to file with the Department of Public Utilities a report, as is every water company. And according to your most recent report for 2023, which was filed, it was filed in April of this year, but it's for the period ending December 31st, 2023. You indicate that all of that equipment was installed in 2008. There is no update as to any equipment that is newer than 2008. Are you saying that you have installed newer pumping equipment and this is inaccurate, or?
No, I'm not saying that. I need to see that report to be able to specifically say which equipment has been updated or which equipment has been pulled out of service and maintained.
Okay. Well, specifically, because it's 16 years old,
Yeah.
I wondered if you had increased replacement for something of that age, 16 years old.
I am sure that there are some that have been replaced. If you want specifics, I can certainly get them to you.
Okay. And just for the record, sir, you were the person who signed this report that was submitted to the state, and it is under the pains and penalties of perjury, so I'm sure you looked it over pretty carefully.
Yeah.
As part of your production of water, do you periodically inspect the pipeline from Dayton to Brockton to make sure that there's no defects in the piping? And
Yes, we inspect it probably every 2 weeks. A crew goes, actually, every time we discharge in Brockton, a crew comes to the point of connection and checks the point of connection. Every other week, we check the valves, the blow-offs. We do periodical flushing on the pipeline, so the pipeline is maintained.
All right, my understanding is there are no hydrants along the way from Dayton to Brockton, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so how do you get into the interior of the pipe and inspect it against any corrosion or damage or potential future break?
Yeah, there are blow-offs and there are valves and they are, so we inspect through that. There are no hydrants, but there are blow-offs, which are basically the same purpose, just to do the flushing.
All right, and with respect to the brine that's discharged when you produce the water, you're required to test that periodically, am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, and how often do we have to test that, and when was it last done?
Well, it's tested every time we do a discharge. We have to match the salinity of the river before we can discharge. So that's
All right.
tested every time.
And I take it the reports are sent to the state because they monitor it?
Yes. Yes, that's regulated under the MPDS permit.
All right, what are the time periods when we're not allowed to withdraw water from the Taunton River? My memory is that if something catastrophic were to happen and we needed a water source because Silver Lake went down for any reason, my memory is that there are certain periods of time during the year, and I think it's in the summer, that we are not allowed to withdraw water from Taunton River. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. That was changed on the Amendment 2. And there are 5 weeks in May, early May to first week of June. It's the spawning season in the Taunton River, and that's the restricted period. But there are provisions that in case of emergency, we could take water from the river to supply to Brockton.
Okay. Now, for 2023, year ending December 31st, 2023, you pumped no water in January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October, and then you pumped 26,188,032 gallons of water in November and 47,338,496 gallons of water in December. Now, I am not an engineer. I don't pretend to be one. I would say, just as a resident and as a counselor, if you did not pump any water through the pipeline for all of those months, what assurance do we have that the integrity of number one, the piping is correct, and number two, that the plant can perform? That seems like a long period of time to be down.
We flush every other day. So we start the plant up and we flush the entire line. It doesn't go that much distance without any water flowing through it.
Okay, so when you file this report, gallons of water pumped, and it includes just water delivered only, it doesn't include maintenance?
Yes, that's only the water delivered to the city.
Okay. How many gallons would you use to flush?
It's
To
about
assure you-
100,000 every other day. So we do that Monday, Wednesday, Fridays.
But you would not have a prolonged period of time pumping, which would test the equipment and the capability of the equipment to sustain production of water, am I right? 100,000 gallons would be just a minimal amount of water.
Yeah, that's the water just to keep the water in the pipeline clean and keep the pipeline free of any contaminant.
By the way, do you know if that's common for water production companies to go that many months without any significant production and transmission of water?
It's common in some secondary plants.
In some secondary?
Yes.
Okay. Is it true that if Dayton needed water in an emergency, part of the permitting process when Aquaria was originally built, we agreed that we would provide Dayton with water? Is that correct?
Well, they don't have a connection yet, but they could make a connection whenever they want.
Whenever they wanted?
Yeah, but that would take weeks, so it's not something that we can do on a matter of just a phone call.
No, I understand that, but do you know what, if that were to occur, how many gallons we would have to provide Dayton?
It wouldn't be Brockton providing water, it would be from the Aquaria plant. We would provide water to Dayton under another contract.
That's true, but you're only permitted for 5 million gallons. If you're going to give us 3.8 million, that would only leave a very small amount of water left for Dayton, and that's why I asked the question. What is the legal obligation to Dayton? Because that obviously could, emphasis could, affect the capability of providing water to Brockton.
Yeah, we don't have a legal obligation to Dayton. We only have a legal obligation to Brockton, and just in case Brockton doesn't use the remainder of the 1.2 million gallons, then we could sell it to other community.
But the permitting from Dayton at the time it occurred, was it not conditional upon your agreement that if in an emergency it was required, Dayton could hook into the system and receive water from the plant?
Yeah, but that was also conditioned to Brockton not needing water at the same time. So always in the contract, Brockton comes first than the other communities.
Okay, so if we needed the water,
Yeah.
you're saying that you could literally say to Dayton, unfortunately, we can't help you?
Yeah.
All right, and I think maybe the last question I have, which has always been intriguing, has any other entity, any other municipality, any other company tried to obtain water from Aquarium, tried to enter into a contractual agreement with you to purchase water?
Well, years ago, some communities tried to get water, but then they didn't want to get a firm commitment, meaning that they have to pay for the water, whether they need it then later or not. So many communities need water during droughts, during the summer, but they are not willing to pay for the equipment and the capacity at the plant for the months that they don't need water, as Brockton does.
Well, but those are conditions you'd set.
Yes, and they are under the contract with Brockton because we cannot sell that water, as we have talked, because it's reserved for Brockton. We cannot sell that capacity to other communities.
Okay, and again, just for the public and for my colleagues, the maximum amount of water for which you're permitted now and allowed to withdraw from the Taunton River is enough to produce 5 million gallons per day of potable water. And I know you have to withdraw about 1.7 gallons from the river to come up with 1 gallon of potable water. So 5 million gallons is all that you're authorized currently. And if that were to increase, you would have to go back to the state and or the federal government to obtain permission. Am I correct?
Correct.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, gentlemen. So just kind of piggybacking on some of the questions asked by Councilor Farwell, you know, over the last few years, the city's been talking about regionalization. And so you state that, I guess, let me ask you a question this way. What efforts does Aquaria make to sell their water to other cities and towns? So do you guys engage other cities and towns to say, hey, we're a water source here? Would you be interested in hooking up to Aquaria?
Yeah, well, we have done that many years ago when the plant was being built, and we have talked with all the communities along the pipeline, Easton, West Bridgewater, Taunton, every one of them. All of them, they have like a stop ready for connection, but no one has in this 15 years made any effort to connect to the pipeline. At some point, we talked with a power plant, we talked with that Tri-Town development in the former naval base. Yeah.
Okay. Can you talk to me about what your capacity to sell is to other cities and towns outside of Brockton? Now, Councilor Farwell just stated that you have a total of 5 million gallons per day of capacity. Right now, I believe, and I wasn't completely clear, but your contractual obligation to Brockton is to have the ability to provide to us 3.81 million gallons a day?
Correct.
Okay. What about, are we able to ask for more water than that, or is that all your, is that all you're required to provide to us?
It's all we're required to provide per the contract. If you needed more water, then we'd have to expand the plant. The building, everything is ready for expansion. You just need to put some more equipment inside the plant, so it would be an easy expansion. Yeah.
Is it your intent to expand?
If we get the clients, yes.
Okay. All right. So if we're at 3.81, that's our usage. That gives you about, what, 1.19 to sell to other communities if they so chose?
Yes.
Okay. Now, with the recent, let's say, not discovery, but with the recent issues regarding PFAS, my understanding is Aquaria, you obviously drawing from the Taunton River, do you have any PFAS issues? The osmosis process pretty much eliminates the acquisition of PFAS in the water that you draw. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So now that we have a lot of other cities and towns that now have PFAS issues with Mass DEP coming down on these, usually the well water used cities and towns to have their water supply have a limited amount of PFAS or whatever their calculation is. Would you expect more cities or towns to now see Aquaria as a benefit because of the non-PFAS in your water?
Yes, I think this will be it's becoming a big issue, the PFAS, and having a water plant that provides water clean of PFAS, I think that will be an important factor for selling water in the next few years.
So is there anything, would you see, so are you going to make any efforts to then find cities and towns that maybe have PFAS issues and again, try to see if they're interested in buying water from Aquaria?
Yes, probably every city and town has PFAS issues because all surface water and most of wells are PFAS contaminated, so yes.
Now, is it and I don't know, but would it be a violation of our contract if we draw our 3.81 million gallons from Aquaria to sell to other cities and towns that have PFAS issues? There's no problem us doing that, correct?
No problem.
All right. Then I think that's something that we should maybe consider as a city, that if we're not even using our capacity over at Aquaria, it might behoove us to begin the process of engaging other cities and towns to sell our non-PFAS water that we acquire from Aquaria to help offset the charges, that we incur from Aquaria. So I think that's something that we as a city should probably consider. That's really the only questions I had. I appreciate your time, gentlemen, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councilor. Anyone else?
Just got a question. It's for Pat.
Councilor Tixer.
No, I got a question for Pat. Pat, Commissioner Hill.
Pat,
Commissioner Hill.
back on the horse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Commissioner Hill. About 5 years ago, Council President Moses Rodriguez was on the mayor's office as intern. So he signed not signed a contract, but he had a deal with the Aquaria to buy the Aquaria for $59 million, I believe.
Yeah, 58 million, 59 million, yeah, I believe so, yeah.
So 5 years later, where we at with this contract? Is it?
We have 3.5 years left in this contract. It's unknown every year. It's based off the CPI, how much the contract goes up. Last year, it actually came down about $3,000 a month. Next year, it could go up. Who knows, based off the CPI. But currently, it's about $8.9 million a year for the fixed fee.
So 4 years, I would say 5 years. 5 years when Council Rodriguez was there, it was 58. I'll call it 58 million, and we spent over 40 million, over 40 million dollars
In the fixed fee, yeah.
in the fixed fee.
Yes.
And if we decide to buy the Aquaria, what's the price today that will negotiate with the Aquaria?
I don't really know that I would be the person to answer that question. I guess that would require us sitting down and having that conversation. We have not had that, certainly not lately. But I do believe that will be a role of the executive to get something like that to go, not me.
What I'm trying to get is I know we got a contract until 2028. It's going to cost us another rough 30 million. We just spent 40, 30, 70. We could have got it for 58. It's win, win, win. And I know we got surround town that will definitely, if we own the Aquarium, we got surround town that will buy water from us. That we can, and according to DEP, that we need a second source of water to be supplied to the.
Yeah, the second source of water, they said, is going to be a requirement of our comprehensive water management plan. So we're actually waiting on DEP to begin those negotiations. They said pretty much point blank that they were not comfortable with Brockton's safe yield out of Silver Lake, with the Avon Reservoir being down, that we would be able to accommodate future needs. So yes, we're going to have a second source regardless. I do not see in the near future any other second source available. There's been a lot of discussion about the possibility of MWRA expanding. After reading through some of the research that was done in the report that was filed by a consultant, it looks as though if MWRA does expand somewhere in this area, you're looking at 15, maybe 20 years before they get here. So it's not going to resolve our problem in 2028 when we're back into negotiations. I personally think it would be a good thing to entertain, to sit down and have a discussion, but that's not my role. I'm happy to participate, but that would have to come from someone else.
We spend quite a bit.
We do.
We spend quite a bit.
It's 43% of the water budget.
So it's something that we should, all of us should definitely sit, talk about it, and see what's the best interest especially for the city. Because I think near future, we're definitely going to need a second source of water, and the money that we really dumping, because it's into the Aquarium, it's money that we can put it back into our city
I don't disagree, and I think Councilor Thompson brought up a very good point with PFAS. The state regulation right now for PFAS is 20 parts per trillion. The feds just changed that regulation, and it won't be in effect until 2028, but it's going to be 4 parts per trillion. There isn't many people in this whole region that are going to be able to attain 4 parts per trillion without significant investments in their infrastructure, and a lot of these little towns and these, surrounding communities can't afford that. So they rely heavily on the state, and the state, only has so much money to give, so.
Thank you, Commission. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Duranencourt and then Fowle.
Yeah, not you, Mr. Commissioner. Mr. Diaz, and of course, Andres, may I have your question? Well, first of all, I just want to thank you guys for taking your time to come here and, of course, having this chat. Just going to ask you a few questions. In regard to your plant, right, so how much, you can just give me like a brief number, like how much does it cost to run that plant in a yearly basis? Just an estimate. I'm assuming you have to spend money to run it, but how much does it cost?
Fixed cost, maybe about, depends on how much we produce every year.
Let me just put it to you like this. It's like, let's just call it your most, expensive year, like whereby, you spend a lot of money. So what would be that number?
Well, there are 3 expensive things: electricity, chemicals, and staff. The staff is a fixed cost, but electricity and chemicals, depends how much water we produce. So on a regular year, maybe it's about 4 million,
Okay.
3.5 to 4.5,
That would be like
depending how much water we
Okay.
because we pay
like 4 to 5 millions. That's just like to run the plant, right? That would be like, it's like $4 to $5 million. That would be like how much it costs to run the plant in a yearly basis, right?
Yeah, depending on how much water we produce.
No, I'm not just I'm going somewhere with this. So it's not just having the plant, but also having a staff. I'm assuming people with knowledge,
Yeah.
who are able to not just be there, but in case of emergency, maintaining it. Obviously, we are talking about the possibility of buying it. Sometimes buying the plant may sound excellent,
Yeah.
but at the end of the day, we need people with knowledge that can actually run it. So $4 to $5 million, that's what it will cost.
Well, it's closer to 4, but that includes electricity, chemicals, all the water, and the years that we have produced a lot of water.
Okay, and sometimes we do have unexpected circumstances whereby there are emergencies and you guys have to buy, different tools, to keep that, that plant alive and being able to, to pump the water that we need, right? So, and that number might change too at any given time.
Since we don't run consistently for 24/7, it's very theoretical to give you an answer to that question because there's such a fluctuation in pricing.
So there is a possibility whereby that number can go up and down
Yes, absolutely.
because we don't know.
Right.
So it's not just like, what I'm trying to get is this. It's like, it's not just, like I stated, having the plant, but we must also have people with knowledge that can maintaining it.
Yes.
And whereby, in a situation like this, if we don't have people with the knowledge that they need to maintaining it, it can be very detrimental, not just to the plant, but also to the plant ability, to produce the water that we need for the city of Brockton. Would that be a true statement?
That's an accurate statement. It's not so much to run the plant, but to keep the plant maintained, to keep everything working. It's a 24-hour. If the plant is going to be running 24/7, you're going to have 3 shifts of people 24/7 all the time that have to be certified by the state. They have to have licenses, and they have to know how to run reverse osmosis plants.
And in a situation like that, right, so you need people with knowledge. I don't know anything about water, I don't think I'll be qualified to apply for a job there. I mean, it would require some kind of special license whereby that person is able to work there, right?
Yes,
So-
I believe here in Boston, they work by T1s to T4s, and T4 is like the top for drinking water. I think that's correct, right? Yeah.
So running this plant will require, number one, knowledge, and number two, the ability to somewhat expect the unexpected, and number three, the knowledge that we need to maintain that, that pipe. I mean, obviously, I was out for, a while, but I remember vividly 2018 and 2019 when I was on the council before, and I'm assuming part of the reason you are still there, I'm assuming it's because of the knowledge that you possess. And obviously, the knowledge that you have is very important to maintain a system like that. Even though this is not something that you are dealing with every single day, but I'm assuming by virtue of your job, you do have the knowledge, to keep that thing alive. And let me just put it to you like this. So let's just, hypothetically speaking, right, the city of Brockton is able to make a deal to buy this. That would require the city of Brockton to assume every responsibility. Would that be a correct statement?
Yes.
So with that being...
Or you can have like an operation and maintenance contract with INEMA or someone else to operate the plant, which is very typical in this
And if the city of Brockton is able to keep you guys, that would be some kind of negotiation based on how much money you would charge the city of Brockton to maintain that plant. So it's not just buying the plant. Because at the end of the day, I just want to make sure that the people that I represent somewhat understand the complexity of what's going on here. And obviously, we are spending a lot of money, I understand, and sometimes it might be a little bit, frustrating based on what the commissioner just stated. It's like 43% of the water budget, and at the end of the day, so this is our taxpayer money. But I just want to make sure that, like, if we are making an investment, or if we are trying to make an investment, we're not just doing it based on emotion, but being able to understand and articulate the situation whereby we go for it and understand that this is not just buying it and leave it there. So we will need people with knowledge. We will need people who are able not just to see what's going on, but being able to maintain it. So at the end of the day, I think this is a conversation that I am looking forward to have, and I guess it would be in the interest of the city of Brockton to own the split as long as we are able to maintain it. I'm not in favor of just buying it, but also having the people with knowledge that can actually, maintaining the plant. And obviously, I don't want to go into details. I have seen whereby people go forward and buying stuff without the proper knowledge of maintaining it, and that at the end cost the city almost 4 times more than what we were spending. So for me, I just want to get your, point of view in terms of like how much money that thing costs to maintaining it in a yearly basis before we even thinking about buying it. So, I just want to get your point of view, and based on what you said, I mean, it can be like 4 to 5 millions, and of course, unexpected costs and all that.
3 to 4.
Yeah,
3 to 4 millions.
It would be a little, that would have to be negotiated, and we'd have to do the numbers, because you're going from an operation to, from a ownership of a plant, where everything is under our roof, to becoming potentially the operating and maintenance group, like any other operation and maintenance company that they have, that do all the operations for water plants, wastewater plants, biofilter, biosolids plants. So then we would have to consider that and negotiate those numbers and look at it that way. It's not a one-to-one.
Okay. I mean, it's like, well, obviously, giving the knowledge, and I put a lot of emphasis into the knowledge that you guys have. Obviously, this is your plant, this is your baby, you've been there and done it. And, I'm assuming if something is going on, you know exactly where to touch, right? And now selling this to our city, will require a whole different ballgame in terms of your disponibility, your responsibility, the ability to reach you, and of course, coming to maintaining that plant. And, I'm looking at a lot of things, and I am in favor of actually the city of Brockton go forward with the negotiation and buying it. But before we can even do so, I just want to know how much. I mean, this is not a conversation that I'm having with you. I'm making that statement publicly. I just want to know how much money that will cost, before, people can actually ask me for my vote. If not, I'm the kind of person that will stand by myself to do what I think is best for the city of Brockton. Again, I just want to thank the both of you for, taking the time to come down here. And like I said, I remember you guys vividly in 2018. You did come in front of the council to speak about this thing, and thank you again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor. I just want to remind everybody that we're not here to discuss whether or not we're purchasing this plant or not. That the item on the agenda is that we had a reduction on the order that was put through, and we're here to discuss the reduction and our recommendation of the reduction forward. So, Councilor Farwell.
Well, you're quite right, Mr. Chairman. And I will certainly be fully prepared if and when the mayor puts a borrowing order in front of us to purchase Aquaria, to talk about what I think would be a catastrophic mistake, and it would require a vote of the people. I do think Councilor Thompson made an interesting point. If we own the plant, we could sell water. But on the other hand, instead of expending all of that money to buy the plant, what if we got together with 2 or 3 other communities and pooled our money and said, let's develop a water resource that'll take care of Bridgewater, Brockton, and some other community? It might be far less expensive. It would be within this water basin, and we might be able to go forward. So contractually, we owe the money. Whether it was a good contract or not, I think most of us have already formed our opinion. And I do thank the gentleman for coming in. I do. I think it's good to have these discussions, and we do have a relationship with you, at least for the next few years.
Yeah, I would like to have a little word in response to one of your first questions regarding the equipment. And the equipment, pumps and things like that, it's not something that we change every 10 years, but we maintain, we change bearings, joints, things like that. So these pumps haven't been used 100% of the time on a 24/7 basis. What we have changed is all the membranes at the plant, which is really the consumable, most expensive at the plant. In the last 4 years, we have changed all the ultrafiltration membranes and all the reverse osmosis membranes. And just in the last year or the last months, we have changed also the SCADA, which is the control system for the plant. That was 10 years old, 15 years old. It was getting obsolete. So everything has been also replaced to today's standards.
Sir, the reason I asked you that is about 5 years ago, I actually visited a desalination plant here in Massachusetts, and the executive director of the Water Authority said to me, Counselor, the only way you're going to know if that plant can sustain operations, produce the amount of water that you want, and that the machinery is of a quality and capability that will take care of the city of Brockton, is if it ran 24/7 for at least 6 months, preferably for a year. And the analogy was that until you can buy a new car and it looks great, but until you take it out on the highway and you drive it for 100 miles at 55 miles an hour, you really don't know what you've got. And he really cautioned me. He said, look, it's not my community, but make sure that that equipment can sustain operations and produce what you need. So that's why I asked you the question. I wasn't trying to be critical, but obviously with equipment that's 16 years old, it is a bit concerning.
I think the most that, since I've been around, was the last period of time there, the November, December, January this year.
I believe it'll be
3 months.
I thank you again, Mr. Chairman and colleagues.
Thank you, Councilor. Anyone else?
Motion to recommend favorably?
Second.
A motion has been properly made in second to recommend this favorably to the council.
Just as a resolve. This is not to transfer the money. That's going to require a new order, because we're in a new year now.
Did you folks get that?
Yeah, we understood that, yeah.
Understood that? Okay.
That will probably come before us Monday night. I'm not sure, but
Okay.
Well,
maybe not. But what's in front of you tonight is just a resolve
Okay.
to discuss this, so this is not the transfer.
All right. So a motion has been properly made in second to recommend this resolve favorably to the entire city council. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? It carries. And thank you, gentlemen, for being here today.
Thank you.
And we have item 2 to move back to the, we had moved it to the end of the agenda, appointment of retired police officer Daniel Leonard to the role of special police officer. Invited Mr. Daniel Leonard.
Councilors, what's the will of the council on this particular one?
Mr. Chairman,
I was able to call him, he's been out of state, he didn't know, so he didn't know he had to be here.
We sent it, but if he's been out of state, we sent it to his home address, so.
Do we, does anybody want to?
I was going to recommend favorably. He's been through all of the reviews by the police chief, and we still have a final vote coming up, so.
Second.
Motion has been properly made in second to recommend number 2 favorably. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? It carries.
Mr. President, Mr. Chairman.
Council Lally.
Maybe not necessarily required, but maybe an invitation to Officer Leonard and Mr. Talbot can be extended for the Monday meeting.
At a council meeting?
In case they want to be present for any questions.
Well,
I don't have any pressing concern, but an idea.
I think, we should be able to, we should follow the same route that we normally follow. If any of us has any concern about the 2 individuals, that we should reach out to them. But to basically dislocate them back here just so that they can stand up and say, I'm here, to me makes...
The retired police officer, if I may, Mr. Chairman, these are just for the, to work details, road details. That's essentially what the retired police officers do. And you all should have their contact information in the packets for both of the people if you need to. And the Conservation Commission is operating at a not full body, which can be a problem for quorums for their meetings, so.
I believe that's the end of the agenda, right?
And just a reminder of Wednesday night.
I just want to take a second or so just to remind councilors that we have a special council meeting on Wednesday at 6 p.m. And this is going to be probably a 30-second meeting just to reappoint our school police officers that should have been reappointed a few weeks ago, so that we can make sure that the folks that are working out there are working legally and carrying out their duties appropriately. So invitations to you all to be here at 6 for about a 15-second, 30-second meeting if you can. Anyone else? Any?
Chairman, we have an ordinance meeting on October, hear me, on July 23rd at 6 o'clock here. One agenda item, but ordinance will meet on July 23rd at 6 p.m.
Okay. Anyone else wants any recognition? Hearing none, we are adjourned.